Dynasty Brain!
What's up, Brainiacs? Welcome into another episode of the LeatherBrainz podcast. And we're bringing to you today another Dynasty Fantasy Football Superflex mock draft. This is going to be based off Charlie's mock draft that he did on Monday. So hopefully you checked out that live stream. If you didn't, make sure to go check that out. But we are going to be doing this fantasy rookie mock draft strictly based off the mock draft that Charlie did, like I just said. And it's going to be interesting. We got a lot of cool landing spots in these situations, and there's going to be a lot of questionable picks in this draft for sure. So we're definitely excited to get into it. Before we continue, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias at LeatherBrainz. Especially make sure to check out our YouTube channel. We've been putting out a ton of great content. Especially check out our fantasy film breakdowns. We just had one with Luther Burden. We had one with Tedero and McMillan. Got a lot of great content out there. And then obviously, like I said before, check out all of our mock drafts because it's draft season and that's what everyone cares about right now. So we're 1 week away from the draft, which is very exciting. And today, Charlie's going to be picking at first overall. I'm going to be picking at second overall, and we're just going to be going back to back every single time. So he's going to have the odds, all of the evens. Charlie, I'll give you the floor here. Start us off.
Yeah, the mock draft's been up on the screen this whole time so far. You guys can see the landing spots, and as we go through the draft in order, I'm going to keep putting the landing spots along with them. But here at the first overall pick, it's a pretty easy selection. He's the first overall pick in pretty much any super flex. The landing spot doesn't really matter. Last week, Ashton Jeanty was on the Chicago Bears. This week, Ashton Jeanty goes 6th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders, and that's who I'm going to be selecting right here as the number 1 overall pick. He's an incredible prospect. We've been talking about Jeanty all offseason now. He's incredible. He's going to be the focal point of the Las Vegas Raiders offense. Him and Brock Bowers, they don't even have that much as a receiving core. They're going to be down and dirty running the ball all day long with Jeanty. I expect him to have buttloads of carries and a lot of fantasy points to go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's going to be the number 1 overall pick no matter what situation he goes to. But I did just make a TikTok talking about why the Raiders should not draft Jeanty. So I definitely don't like this landing spot in terms of the Raiders in real life, but definitely the right pick in fantasy. And number 2 here, in my eyes, it's very much a battle between 2 different players. It's Cam Ward or Omarion Hampton. I'm going to go with Hampton here, who goes 29th overall to the Commanders. And you might say that might be crazy over a guy like Cam Ward, who's going number 1 overall, but it could take Cam Ward 2 to 3 years to be like a top end fantasy quarterback with how bad that Titans offense is looking. Whereas Omarion Hampton, if he goes to the Commanders, he's going to come in as an elite prospect in an elite offense, and he's going to score a ton of points. There's going to be a lot of touchdown potential in that offense. Brian Robinson, I think, scored double-digit touchdowns last year. Austin Eckler was feasting in the receiving game. And with both of them coming into contract years, the door is open for Hampton to have a 3-down role in a Jaden Daniels-led offense. And so I think, they're going to be winning a lot of games. Hampton's going to feast. And I just like the upside of him in year 1 and, the rest of the years after that, as opposed to with Ward, I think it could take him 2 years to really get into that quarterback 1 range.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that Hampton is going to be a running back 1 in his first year with the Washington Commanders, but I am fully confident that he will be extremely fantasy relevant because they're probably going to end up still using Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler on the field at least a good portion of the time, and that might move Hampton into, he might finish as his rookie season as the RB15, the RB16, which would still be a phenomenal year for a rookie running back. I don't think a lot of fantasy managers would be upset if Hampton was a 12 through 18 running back after his rookie year and then being able to own the whole backfield by himself the following season. So I do think it's a really good landing spot. Obviously, it's one of the best offenses in the league. So whatever running back is going to be there is going to have fantasy value. And when it's an incredible prospect like Omarion Hampton, he's going to be dominant. At 3rd overall, I am going to take the other guy who you were talking about in Cam Ward. I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table for the Tennessee Titans. It really seems like he's like guaranteed to go there. I mean, it's for sure. He was playing Fortnite the other day talking about Calvin Ridley being the best wide receiver in the league, Treylon Burks and all that, Tony Pollard and Ty J. Spears. I'm glad that he's excited about what he's going to bring to Tennessee. Nashville area. It's going to be great. Cam Ward's going to be an exciting prospect to watch. And I know you're saying he won't be super fantasy relevant right away, but I do think with the culmination of his legs and his throwing ability with getting the ball deep, he's going to bring fantasy relevant games to the table, and that's all you can ask for from a great first overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, the game script should be in his favor, which could work well for him. I just don't know how much he's going to use his legs because obviously he has
Yeah.
speed, but he also is a traditional pocket passer and likes to sit back in the pocket and make throws, which isn't a bad thing. But in terms of fantasy, I don't think his rushing upside is as high as some people might like. But at the 4th overall pick here, this is a really tough one, and this is gonna come as a surprising pick here, but I'm gonna be
No.
selecting Luther Burden here at 4th overall, getting drafted to the Denver Broncos at 20. I would usually never take Luther Burden this high. Now, he is my wide receiver 1 in this class. Now, Travis Hunter is technically actually my wide receiver 1, and he goes to the Browns at 2nd overall, but he just came out and said that he's gonna retire if he's not playing both sides of the ball. So, I think he will play both sides, and he could be a receiver, but if he's only playing 60% of the snaps on offense, I would just rather take a guy who I know is going to be a full-time receiver. And Burden gets that first-round draft capital. He goes into a great offense. He's going to be the slot receiver for Bo Nix. Him and Nix will develop a connection over time. And there's not really a dominant force in this offense right now. So Burden could step in year 1 and become the focal point of the offense if he's really able to explode at the NFL level. But I talked about him in the film breakdown. He has a great NFL skill set. He can run routes very well. He's impossible to tackle after the catch. And he broke out at a very early age in college and was held back by his quarterback play this past year. So I love Burden. It might be a little bit of a reach here, but I think that he's the best player on the board.
Burden is definitely one of my favorite prospects. He's exactly who I want the Denver Broncos to select at 20th overall. He's going to be a game changer for whatever team he goes to. He's going to be fantasy relevant with a ton of close to the line of scrimmage manufactured touches, which I think fits really, really well inside of Sean Payton's offense, being able to use Luther Burden on one side of the field, use Evan Ingram on the other side of the field, and then go deep and hit down the field with Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. I think it's going to be a dynamic offense, although I don't think that it's going to bring more fantasy abundance than the guy who goes 8th overall to the Carolina Panthers in Tetaroa McMillan, who I'm going to be selecting at 5th overall. This is my favorite wide receiver in this class. The way that he's able to maneuver his body to create separation at the catch point, I think is next level. I'm really excited for him and Bryce Young with that accuracy that Bryce Young brings to the table to be able to flourish finally. I think Bryce Young is going to definitely break out this year. And with the help of Tetaroa McMillan being a dominant wide receiver 1 for him, I think with the draft capital, it's no question. I do think you got to really take into account the draft capital in this place where Luther Burden goes 12 picks after Tetaroa. So I'm going to take Tetaroa right here at the 5th overall pick.
I mean, I agree the capital matters, but if he's also going in the top 20 picks, I don't really care that much if the situation, and I think personally that Burden is a better player. I agree, though. You can't take any of these second round players over McMillan. Like, I was contemplating taking a guy like Travion Henderson, but you
Right.
just can't take a guy with second round draft capital over somebody who goes into the top 10. So I think McMillan is the pick here. And, if you don't like the situation in Carolina with Bryce Young, then I would just trade out of the pick personally if you were in this situation and try to get a ton of good value, maybe move back a few slots and get somebody good, because I think the drop off between, pick 4 or 5 and then pick 8 is not that big, but somebody might be willing to pay
Really?
a bigger price to move up.
You think the Panthers are a bad landing spot for a wide receiver? Because I think it's one of the best landing spots.
I don't think they're going to take a receiver with their first round pick.
I
Personally,
mean, yeah,
that's just
we'll
me.
see.
That's just me, but obviously you have him going here in this mock. So in this situation, I like the capital, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Bryce Young does not excite me very much in terms of being a high volume passer in the NFL where he's
Mm.
throwing for high 300-yard games. Like, that just doesn't excite me too much. And they have other talent on that team too. Xavier Legette last year was a first round pick. And that's why I don't think they're going to take a
Yeah.
receiver, because they took a receiver first round last year. But either way, obviously he would come in as a receiver 1. And I like Dave Canales a lot, so that would be good for him. But moving on now to the next pick here at 6th overall. I'm actually considering Jackson Dart here with the top 10 draft capital going 7th overall to the Jets. but he's
Might sit
most
for a
likely
year
not
though.
gonna play year 1. I think Fields would play year
Mm.
1. Dart probably comes in year 2, and I don't love the weapons that they have going on there. So I'm gonna go with Travion Henderson here at pick 6. He gets drafted to the Bears at pick 41. He's the third running back off the board, and the Bears are a great landing spot. Ben Johnson's the new head coach. We all saw what Jahmyr Gibbs, we all saw what David Montgomery were able to do with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. So Henderson would be able to step in my eyes, to the running back 1 role right away. He'll be on the field with his pass blocking ability. DeAndre Swift does not excite me whatsoever. He disappointed horrendously last year. And on top of that, this is probably his last year with the Bears, considering the Bears have an opt-out for him after this season where they don't have to pay him another $8 million to just sit on our bench. So I think Henderson, with his big playability going into a great offense, even though he has that second round capital and there's still a few first round guys on the board, you're not going to get this good of a player going into that good of an offense much later in the draft.
Yeah, this draft is definitely going to be a lot different from the last Dynasty Fantasy Football mock we did. And that's exactly why we're running through these scenarios, because it's so crucial to how the NFL draft goes and these landing spots of how they need to be interpreted in your fantasy drafts. I like the pick that you made there. And really where we're at, we got to start considering, like you mentioned, Jackson Dart, who may sit a year, and I'm not too enticed by that. We've got Matthew Golden, who went 16th overall to the Arizona Cardinals, and that honestly is one of the smelliest picks in this draft for me. It really worries me because he's going to be the third option there because they already have Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not a high passing volume offense because of how much Kyler wants to use his legs. And he's one of these speed wide receivers coming out that just has always worried me, with the likes of Henry Ruggs going in the first round and Marquise Brown. And it can be genuinely scary sometimes because it's helpful to have volume in fantasy football. When you're picking high in your fantasy drafts, you want volume, you want efficient guys that are going to guarantee you something at least. You could go out there and have a crazy day as Matthew Golden and catch 2 touchdowns for 2 long touchdowns, but I am kind of averted from that. And I think I'm going to be going with 51st overall pick here, Quinshawn Judkins to the Denver Broncos, right off of Travion's back. I think this is a volume landing spot. There's so much opportunity for Quinshawn in this offense. If they go Luther Burden in the first round, Sean Payton's going to want to run the ball a lot anyways, and Quinshawn can handle a lot of touches. He proved that in the SEC, even though he had to share touches when he was at Ohio State. But I'm really excited for Quinshawn in this landing spot with the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a bowling ball running back. He can handle a lot of touches. And in this situation, he gets drafted to the Broncos with second round capital. I like him more than anybody else on the board, especially with a weaker landscape of dynasty running backs right now. So I think Quinshad's coming in. And a lot of people are saying he's being very underrated in this draft. He came and had a really good year at Ohio State. He was great on Ole Miss. He had a really good college career, and he definitely is getting a little bit underrated and outshined by the fact that there's some other really good running back prospects in this draft. Here at pick 8, I agree with you about Golden in the situation. You clearly haven't watched enough film on him, though, to say that he plays like Marquise Brown. He's
No,
not.
he doesn't play like them at all, but it's a speed guy.
I mean, he's a pure route runner at the end of the
That's
day.
true.
That's also fast. But I agree. It's not a good situation because he's going to be the third target and they are going to run the ball a lot. So I don't like the situation, even with the top end draft capital. So at this pick here at 8, I'm going to go with the Mecca Ibuka. He's going to be the slot receiver in a Cam Ward offense. I think you could argue taking him as high as 6th overall in this draft. I think I was considering taking him over Travion Henderson. Cam Ward gets his wide receiver 1 potentially, especially with Ridley. He's going to be good, but he only has a couple years left. He's in his low 30s at this point. So Ibuka will come in. He's going to garner a ton of targets in the slot. We talked about the game script earlier with Cam Ward. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, and the slot is your quarterback's best friend. He's your safety blanket, and Ibuka's a jack of all trades. He's fast. He can run routes. He's consistent. He stays on the field. In my eyes, he's probably the safest bet to turn out in the NFL, at least as like a solid player, solid fantasy option, especially in PPR formats. And I love when teams draft a quarterback and a receiver in the same draft in the
Mhm.
top 3 rounds, because they can come up together and they can learn together and go through the rookie experience together. And if they both end up as good players, that chemistry is just going to continue over time. So I think Ibuka is the pick here.
Yeah, I think this is a really good pick because it's exactly what I was talking about with Quinshon, a volume play. You know,
Mhm.
Emeka is going to be getting that volume at the next level with Cam Ward going in as this wide receiver. I'm surprised you honestly ignored some of the draft capital left up on the board, but I do like the selection that you made. And I think now's the time that I'm going to be taking Jackson Dart off the board. If he does get that top 10 draft capital, that's going to set him apart. I mean, he went even higher in our last mock draft, even though he went in the second round, which is kind of surprising because it kind of just he went to we had him on the Browns, right? Last
Yeah,
draft. So
33rd
yeah, so there
rounds.
it's like a guaranteed starting spot if the Browns take a quarterback. And so that enticed me a little bit to take him earlier last draft. Here he goes even way earlier, so we're much more excited about the draft capital, but it's also it only takes one team to take a quarterback. So you can't put as much on draft capital for quarterbacks as you could for a wide receiver or a running back or a tight end because it means so much more to take one of those other players at a high valued pick than a quarterback because they always tend to go that high. But in this case, I do really like Jackson Dart anyways. And so I'm hoping for him to start ahead of Justin Fields. Maybe not so, but we'll see.
Yeah, this next pick here, and I like the Dart pick because, like I said, I was considering him at my last pick. When you have the top 10 draft capital, if the Jets were to select him, he's got to go in the top 10 of your fantasy,
Mhm.
rookie draft. He's got to. He just has capital, and he's a quarterback. Especially, like I said, this is a super flex league. This is PPR. Like you got to get a good quarterback, especially when you're the top 24 quarterbacks in the league are going to be starting. At this next pick here, this is so tough. I don't think there's a clear player
Yeah.
that you can really put up here. I think the two tight ends are the clear two best players on the board here. And I'm actually going to go with Colston Loveland here, which
I was
might
hoping
seem
you would do
it
that.
might
Nice.
seem like a little bit of a risky pick here. I don't love the Tyler Warren to the Bengals pick just because it would be we talked about this before the podcast, but it would be crazy if the Bengals went out there and drafted another offensive player after having a horrific defense that cost them their entire season last year. But Loveland to the Chargers. He gets to be back with Jim Harbaugh. He gets the first round draft capital. Chargers missed on Evan Ingram in free agency, and this is their vertical threat tight end that's going to be able to make huge plays downfield. He's going to be able to make huge plays in the slot as well. He'll be doing all types of routes. And I think that the difference between him and a guy like Tyler Warren is that I just don't know how productive Warren's going to be in the Bengals offense when Jamar is obviously going to be the one, and you just signed T. Higgins to a long-term extension. And I'm not saying that Joe Burrow can't produce a ton of guys, but when you also sign Mike Gesicki to a 3-year extension, Warren might be used a lot more as a blocker and a receiver as well, but he's a great blocker. And that might not produce as much fantasy value as someone like Loveland, who might be used more as a vertical threat. So I'm going to take Loveland here at 10th overall.
Yeah, I like that pick. Although there is a guy left that I would have taken over Emeka still, who this is probably one of my favorite things of this whole mock draft that I did, where I'm going to be taking Travis Hunter right here, who
Mm.
goes second overall to the Cleveland Browns because the Cleveland Browns draft Shadur Sanders at 33. We got them paired up together again. I think that's going to be an incredible, like, valuable experience for him, specifically at the wide receiver position. Like, that means Travis Hunter is definitely going to have to play at least a lot of wide receiver in the NFL. He wants to play both ways. And so that to me, I know to you that makes you think that he's going to play cornerback primarily, but to me that makes me have some relaxation in the idea that he's probably going to play a good amount of wide receiver in the NFL, and that makes me more confident to draft him in my dynasty superflex rookie drafts.
No, I agree, and I honestly forgot about him a little bit because you start looking
Right?
at the draft, and it's like you think that you're through all the players in the top end picks, and then you forget that Hunter is like a wild card play. So I think looking back, I probably would take him as high as 9th overall. I don't think I could take him over Abuka or Judkins, but I
It's just
think
too cool with
you
Shadur.
I think you could take, yeah, with Shador, you can definitely take him over Dart and Loveland. But again, you're just going to have that risk of not knowing the snap share that he's going to play.
Right.
And I think we talked about it last time, but you really got to be in a good position to take Travis Hunter unless he really does come out and they say he's going to play a large amount of snaps at receiver, because if you go out there and he only plays 50% and he ends up as a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, you're just completely wasting this, not wasting this
Yeah.
pick, but you're
Plus
losing
injury
out
risk is
on.
higher, like, if he gets injured out there
Mhm.
as a corner, that's so annoying. That's gotta be so frustrating.
So frustrating. It's like, the NFL is going to be a much more physical league than
Mhm.
college. And playing 100 snaps a game is not going to fare the same way in college as it does in the NFL, especially when college is only a 12-game season and the NFL is an 18-game season. So
$100%.
it's going to be very different. And who knows? Travis Hunter could prove me wrong and he could stay healthy. But on a year-to-year basis, like, there's no way that he's not going to have injuries if he's playing both sides of the ball consistently.
Mhm.
But let's move on to the 12th pick here. And I think I'm just going to go with the other tight end here with Tyler Warren. I think he's the best player on the board. He has the high end draft capital. Even though, I said that Jamar and Higgins are going to have, a good share of the targets, Tyler Warren is a really talented player. He's a jack of all trades. He can do everything on the field. He's going to block. He's going to roll out to the right. He's going to be able to catch long passes, make contested catches. Him and Joe Burrow would be a terrific duo. And I think the hope would be that, maybe he's not as great and maybe he's, a lower end tight end one for the first 3 years of his career. But then, T. Higgins starts to get older. Maybe they don't re-sign him. And then it becomes Jamar and Tyler Warren as the main pieces in this offense. So Tyler Warren in this situation could be more of a long-term play, but with his talent and Joe Burrow at the helm, you can't keep him out of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still would have gone Matthew Golden ahead of Tyler Warren just because of the fact that, like, he's a wide receiver. They're both, I mean, Matthew Golden goes ahead of Tyler Warren in this case. Top 16 draft capital as a wide receiver, I think, is really meaningful. And they're both going to be the third options on their team. So it's a little tough, but I'm going to be avoiding Matthew Golden here still again, which is honestly the most surprising part of this draft, that Matthew Golden is not going inside these top 13 picks, even though he's the 16th overall pick in this draft. But I'm going to
Yep.
be taking Shedeur Sanders right here because he's a guaranteed starter on the Browns. I love it with Travis Hunter there. I like Jerry Jeudy. I like Cedric Tillman. Now I like their receiver core when they have Hunter there.
Yeah.
Good offensive line. Hopefully they get a running back later. So I'm pretty confident that Shedeur should definitely be off the board around here.
Yeah, I mean, this is where he went in our last draft. I just
Mhm.
don't have, like, he's going to start probably by week 5 if he got drafted to the Browns, especially if they
No,
draft
week one.
Hunter.
Week one for sure.
I don't know. I still don't think week 1. If he's going second round in the NFL draft, I don't
You'd
think he's good
start
enough.
Kenny Pickett over him? No way.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
You don't.
Okay.
I just
Fair.
don't think they're going to be willing to start Shedeur week 1 if he gets drafted. Like, when's the last time a second round quarterback started week 1? Like, that doesn't happen. They usually sit behind them. Obviously, Kenny Pickett's not great, but
Dak?
I
Dak
but
even start week 1?
we've
No, he
seen, did
didn't.
he?
No, I
I don't
don't
think
think
he
so.
did. And if he did, it was because of an injury to somebody else. Either way,
Mhm.
I don't like Shedeur because of his lack of rushing upside. And so I personally wouldn't have taken him this high just because I don't think his ceiling is that high on this team. The Browns are
Mhm.
not a great situation, but Kevin Stefanski is a solid coach at the end of the day, even though he's had some bad seasons. At this next pick here, I think there's a lot of good players on the board. Matthew Golden is still on the board, and I'm still not going to take
Oh,
him.
come on.
Not going to take him here. I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson, who gets drafted
Oh,
to the Chiefs. I feel like because that's a better pick. I think that Caleb
I
Johnson
don't
with the
know.
second round draft capital
Yeah.
goes to a great offense in the Chiefs where there's no running back there that I'm really afraid of. You have Pacheco, who just came off a down season, who's entering a contract year. You have Kareem Hunt, who is on another 1-year deal. And they probably brought back Samaje Perine too, who does nothing every year. So you have one of the best offenses in the league that is going to be either winning every game or competing in every single game. So the game script is never going to mess him up. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns, and he gets that second round draft capital. He's a guy that had 1,500 yards, 20 touchdowns at Iowa. He is known for being able to handle a huge workload, and I think he could do the same for the Chiefs, and they're really going to rely on him down the road.
All right, just give me Matthew Golden now. If I'm sitting at the 2-3 in a super flex draft and I can get the 16th overall pick in the NFL draft, man, am I happy coming out of that fantasy draft. So we'll just select him there as the value, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's the value, but it's like, how good is he going to be? Like, is Kyler
Right,
going to be able to
right.
produce
At this point,
Marv?
at this point, you got to take him though.
No, I agree. It was between Caleb Johnson and him for me, but it's like, again, is he going to outproduce Marv and McBride? I don't think
No
so,
way.
and neither of
No
those
way.
guys are going anywhere anytime
Right.
soon.
Right. I like the Caleb Johnson pick, but obviously, I mean, Caleb, like, no prospect is perfect, and it's like they can still fall on their faces no matter what. So you gotta just hope that the talent prevails in some way, and it can at least
Mhm.
bring you some wide receiver 2 numbers max, maybe. Because I mean, you cannot expect wide receiver 1 numbers out of Matthew Golden.
No, I agree with that, and that's why I think the upside is just low, especially in a
Totally.
lower pass volume offense, but I like
Mhm.
Golden as a prospect. I still wouldn't take him that high just because situation, but I guess we have been told, especially with receivers, talent will always prevail the situation. I'm gonna go with this next pick with the 2-4. I don't honestly love Jalen Noel, like, that much as a
Mhm. It's good.
player, but he gets drafted at 42nd overall here to the Jets, and they drafted Jackson Dart in the first round. So he comes in where
Same
Garrett
thing.
Wilson is the lone option in this offense in terms of the receivers and the tight ends. So Noel can come in and be the receiver too right away. So he has that opportunity. He comes in with a high end rookie quarterback. Again, I just mentioned it, coming in, getting that chemistry, and he's going to be able to be a great pairing with Garrett Wilson. So I think that Noel here, there's not really a guy on the board right now that I think you can guaranteed say will be like a stud in the league or that's going to come out and start week one. And I think that Noel, with his draft capital and the opportunity to shine with Jackson Dart, who's going to be slinging the ball, I think he's the right pick here.
Yeah, I definitely like that selection. I think that's exactly where I would have gone next. Just it definitely opens up this Jets offense. Having Garrett Wilson with
Totally.
Jalen Noel and Jackson Dart, that seems like an actually credible Jets attack over there. At this pick, I'm going to be taking Jalen Milrow, who goes 45 to the Indianapolis Colts. I think this is a prime position to outright earn the starting job. He kind of brings together a little bit of what Anthony Richardson does, along with what Daniel Jones can do, kind of a middle ground. And I'm not too hot on Jalen Milrow, but he might be better than Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, though, like legitimately. So we'll have to see. I'm going to be selecting him here because I think he has a chance to start. And if he goes 45th overall to the Colts, I think that's a pretty good opportunity.
It would just be so funny if the Colts took another rushing quarterback and then he
Yeah.
just ended up not working out. Like, that would just be the most Colts thing to do ever. And again, this is how your mock worked out. So we're going off that. But we mentioned it last time. You just have to take Milrow a little bit higher than you might want to with the rushing upside. Like, he might never be a good quarterback in the NFL, but if he's giving you 70 rush yards and a potential touchdown every game, it doesn't really matter how bad of a passer is. He's going to be a playable guy every single week. So in that regard, I do like it. And at this next pick here, there's just so many guys that I like at this pick.
A slew of receivers,
There's a lot of receivers, but I
couple running
I'm
backs.
actually going to go with a running back here, and I'm going to go with Dylan
Mm,
Sampson, who gets drafted third round
nice.
to the Cowboys. The landing spot is obviously great. The Cowboys running back room, they have basically nobody. You have Javonte Williams on a 1 year, $3 million contract. You have Miles Sanders on a 1 year, I think $1 or $2 million contract. So the running back room has no security to it. Dylan Sampson, great overall running back. He played a 3 down role at Tennessee. He had a lot of production. He did have some injury issues, which is somewhat concerning. And his draft capital in this draft isn't great. But when I look at the other players on the board, nobody really excites me as much in terms of upside. I was considering Trey Harris, who gets that top 40 draft capital going to the Saints. But I think Sampson here going to the Cowboys, where Schottenheimer, who came out earlier in the offseason and said that they want to get back to being able to run the ball consistently. I think that you got to take Sampson here and just hope that he can become the Cowboys running back for the next minimum 2 to 3 years if he can earn the starting spot.
Yeah, whoever the Cowboys take, you gotta consider pretty
Totally.
early in your rookie drafts. Right here at the 2-7, I'm gonna be taking Alec Iomanner out of Stanford, who goes to the the Los Angeles Chargers at 55th overall. I love this landing spot for him, especially. I mean, Alec has the opportunity in this landing spot to catch a lot of touchdowns, a ton of touchdowns. I think it's a really good landing spot. They look to have a really good offense with Jay Herbo, Ellick, along with Lad McConkey, and then Colston Loveland, who they got in the first round. That offense is loaded with a good defense already. The Chargers could be really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Io Manor, I like him as a player. He torched Syracuse over this past year, and we talked about it in the last mock draft. He also torched Travis Hunter 2 seasons ago. So him going to the Chargers here, they get Loveland and Io Manor, and now you have Loveland and Lad McConkey, who are playing over the middle of the field, and you get Io
Mhm.
Manor on the outside, who can really take on that role opposite of QJ. And so I do like that a lot for the Chargers, and I think he could overtake as their X receiver, which would be obviously so beneficial in a Herbert-led offense. But at this next pick here at the 2-8, I'm going to go with Kyle Williams. He is my wide receiver 5 in the class. And I don't love the landing spot here in Detroit just because I don't know what the targets are going to look like. You have Amon Ra, you got Laporta, you got JMO, you got Gibbs. There's a lot of talent in this team, but I
You might
just
move on from
mentioned it.
JMO though.
Talent will always prevail. And I think that Kyle Williams is a very talented player. You got Jared Goff, who's probably going to be there for the next couple of years at the minimum. And so I think that Kyle Williams can come out, and who knows, injuries happen. He could go out there and make a really big impact as their wide receiver 3. So I think that Kyle Williams will come out and he'll be an explosive option for the Lions. There were some other guys that I would have considered, that I was also considering at this pick, but I think that with how high I have Williams ranked as a receiver, even with more of a poor situation, I do believe in Dan Campbell's ability to develop him similar to other players that they have. And so even if it takes 2 years for Williams to really be a viable fantasy option, I'm willing to stash him in, some of the deeper leagues that I'm in. And that just depends on your league settings and how big your bench is and what the state of your team is. But in this situation, I think Kyle Williams is a great play long term. Short term, he's not going to be great.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Man, there's only 4 picks left in this draft, and there is just plenty of guys that I still want. Oh
Yep.
my god, I think I'm gonna be taking another Los Angeles Charger, Baishal Tootin, who goes
Wow.
86th overall, running back. I think this is a great opportunity for him, especially to be used exactly how he needs to be used. He's a speed back, and if he gets this draft capital, I am going to be thrilled with what he can bring at the next level for a team like the Chargers, where I think they can use Najee as a ground and pound guy and then use Baishal as more of a Devon Achane type of back where it's just a speedster that can't touch the ball all the time in the game, but might not need to.
I don't see it. I like it because he's fast and he can provide some explosiveness alongside Najee, who's only on a 1-year deal. But with his draft capital, like late third round, I just don't believe in him as a player enough to be able to handle a full workload in this offense. And if he is able to be like a Devon Achane or like a early in his career Alvin Kamara, where you only need so many touches to be productive in fantasy, then yes, he could be great in this offense. But I just don't think that he's going to be able to do that at the next level. And so that's why I think it is a little bit of a risky pick, but the Chargers have
Totally.
opportunity. And at the 2-9, you're looking for opportunity. You're looking for guys who can start. And that, Tuden could start if Najee goes down or, Tuden just plays really well. At this next pick here, I think he's fallen far enough. I'm going with Trey Harris here
Mm.
from Ole Miss. The one stat that sticks out about Trey Harris is he's number 1 in all receivers eligible for the draft this year in terms of yards per route run, which is a stat that has translated beautifully to the NFL level. He does everything. I'm just a little bit concerned with his athleticism at the next level, whether or not he's going to be able to get separation on a consistent basis. He gets drafted to the Saints here, most likely looking at now Derek Carr, who's probably going to be out for the season. And you don't have the Saints drafting a quarterback in the first round here, meaning that Spencer Rattler, who obviously I love and is a gunslinger, Harris enters as the wide receiver 3 in this offense with Olave and Shaheed, but that also offers him a good opportunity to be the X receiver, similar to players that we just discussed with Io Manor on the Chargers. So he is top 40 draft capital. If you're getting a top 40 player at the 210, you're gonna come out of the draft happy.
Yeah, I'm just not too keen on the landing spot. The Saints in general are just a slow moving team.
Kellen
I'm
Moore
not too
though.
happy with their passing attack and their quarterback situation, but I'm going to be selecting Jaden Higgins here at the 211, who goes 50th overall to the Seattle Seahawks. I think that's a pretty good landing spot, honestly, especially for a big wide receiver like Higgins, where he can really be a differentiating asset to their Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba that they already have there. If all things go well with the Sam Darnold experiment, then I think Jaden Higgins could be a really valuable pick here as the X wide receiver in Seattle.
Yeah, I like the pick here. I think Higgins is a good player. I think he fits well with the fact that you have JSN and Cup who are going to play more primarily in the middle, and you also bring in
Mhm.
MVS who's going to be more of the deep threat. I think at this last pick here, it's really tough because I love Xavier Restrepo as a player. I think he's super
right?
crafty, and he goes to the Jags
Great landing spot.
Where Liam Cohen could unleash him. So I
I
think
know
that he
I
could be
loved
the
when I
pick
picked
here.
that.
But
That's what you're gonna take?
no, I'm not. I'm going to take
Okay.
Cam Scatabo here, who goes 89th
Ooh.
overall, third round to the Texans. I just like the landing spot here. Joe Mixon in the second year of his contract. He's going to have probably an injury that keeps him out for 3 to 4 weeks. Scatabo is a guy that can do it all. He was a focal point of Arizona State's offense and had a great year. And he also proved that he can produce against great NFL defenses. I think he's going to be one of the biggest sleepers because he's a guy that proved that he has a great rushing ability, great receiving ability, and he's done it at every level so far. There's just question marks about whether or not his athleticism is going to transfer, to the next level. But I think here, where you have an opportunity to go into a growing offense with CJ Stroud and another great passing attack, I think Scatabo you could even look at him being a somewhat viable option towards the end of the season, depending on how
Totally.
Mixon's year goes. Because Mixon, again, similar to a lot of these other running backs, sign this 3-year contract where they have an out after year 2. And if Scatabo comes out and he proves that he can handle a full workload, why would they keep Mixon when they're already kind of going to be in a cap restraint because they're most likely going to have to pay CJ Stroud soon and Will Anderson soon. And so if you can just skip paying the running back and just roll with a guy on a rookie contract, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's a great pick to get in here. Some of the other guys left that are still in exciting landing spots. Harold Fannin Jr., who goes
Yep.
65th to the New York Giants, is really exciting. Jalen Royals, who goes 68th to the Las Vegas Raiders, potentially being their wide receiver one of the future. I mean, that's a great opportunity for him. You mentioned Xavier Restrepo to the Jags. There's also Jack Besh, 77 to the New England Patriots.
Arroyo, I think is a sleeper in this
Right,
going to the
Elijah Arroyo,
Rams.
totally to the Rams. I mean, you like Mason Taylor, and he gets to the Colts here. I
Which
feel
I
like
don't
those
love because
guys
they
are
take
all
I don't love that because they take Jalen Milroe in this draft, which doesn't bode well for Mason Taylor's value. But I think Arroyo could come into this Rams offense and Sean McVay could absolutely cook with him. But this was definitely an interesting mock draft. I do
Mhm.
think that, a lot of these picks are crazy and a lot of picks that I made were crazy. And that's the beauty of mock drafts is that outside of the top couple picks in the NFL draft, we really have no idea what's going to happen. And all we can do is predict and try to analyze situations as they stand. But we really hope that everybody enjoyed this mock draft. Let us know who you would have taken at any of these picks. Did we reach on any players? Did any players fall way too far? Again, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias at LeatherBrainz and especially check out our YouTube channel. We posted a ton of great content on there. Make sure to check out our fantasy film breakdowns, which we've been releasing every weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So definitely make sure to tune in for that. Tune in next week. On Monday, we will be having a mock draft Monday again for the final time as the draft is happening next week. It's come so soon. But make sure to tune into that. And then we will be posting a final mock draft episode with our final mock draft. And then from that point, we're going to be getting into a lot of rookie content, knowing the landing spots and kind of analyzing how we see these guys fitting into their system. So a lot of stuff to look forward to. We really hope that everybody enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next week, and we're out.
3, 2, 1.